Thank you very much, Chair, and I want to thank the organizers as well for inviting me to talk about this topic. I want to start by acknowledging the researchers that have done wonderful work on this subject all over the world, but also in South Africa, and MSM, the community of MSM, who are the experts on the topic. A lot of work has been carried out on MSM in South Africa, and even though young people do feature this work, there is limited focus on young MSM specifically. The studies have been done in different spaces, different places. They use different samples and methodologies. So what I'm going to try to do in this presentation is to synthesize or try to draw a picture of how the risk profile for young MSM looks like based on the different studies in South Africa and also referring to international literature. Globally, MSM are several times likely to acquire HIV infection than the general population. And the prevalence rates for MSM in South Africa have been put at between 10 to about 43%. There is a study that is also being showcased here. I can refer you to one of the posters by my colleague, my colleague's poster 152. It also shows that for certain groups of young men, HIV prevalence can go to as high as 48%, and that's still within the range that's been observed in different studies. Young MSM exist and engage in a sexual practice within wider dynamics and structures, and discussion of their risk ought to recognize this. As part of adolescents and young people, they meet similar challenges in accessing and utilizing services as are met by adolescents in general. And this came out quite strongly during the opening plenary by the youth rep. Young MSM are also affected by dynamics within broader society, the age mixing, the bisexuality, the trend whereby condom use decreases with age, among others. At individual and behavioral level, risk factors for MSM that have been identified include unprotected receptive anal intercourse, high frequency of male partners, high number of lifetime partners, and injecting drug use, among others. In the US, high rates of HIV infection among black MSM have been attributed to high STI prevalence, and a general situation whereby black MSM are not linked to care. And this has led to conclusions that structural factors are important, perhaps even more important than individual risk behaviors. Now, some of the structural determinants, some of which are displayed in the figure, are interconnected, and they work at many levels, not necessarily in the single level that I've displayed there. But if you look at criminalization, and this has come up again and again, especially across our continent, the Global Forum for Men who have sex with men and HIV stresses how it provides a pretext for extortion, blackmail, and violence targeting MSM, and even so, where the law does not explicitly criminalize such behavior. In other words, while laws and policies exist, especially at the broadest level in South Africa, and those laws protect against discrimination on the basis of sexuality, violence is still witnessed against LGBTI communities, and MSM are still not catered for by the public health sector's services. Services for MSM have indeed grown over the last few years, but most of them are in metropolitan areas and are driven largely by the NGO sector. Government does support and is committed to supporting these activities, but the NGO sector is the one that's driving work on MSM. Within the public domain, conversations are also alive, and you can see them if people are denied accommodation in places that are supposed to be publicly accessible to them. Yet there are also some acts of resistance happening, and if you see those acts happening, like at the levels of the media, then they are likely to be powerful. We have a television series that has indicated that it wants to infuse issues of homophobia into its programming. So those are interesting developments as well. But one thing that's important to think about is why, even if we have laws that protect people, why is it that there is so much subordination and marginalization? And this is not a subject that one can discuss within a forum such as this. There's lots of writing about it. But just to indicate for purposes of this presentation that homophobia is sometimes seen as an aspect of post-colonial dynamics, particularly when people seek to redefine themselves in opposition to what was associated with colonial relations. So I'll refer you to Epprecht and Obo as some of the authors that have written around it. But if you look at that and look at the history of South Africa, then already mentions the notion of gay masculinity and how it presents a false sense of inclusiveness and solidarity. What he's putting across is that the structural factors have defined how gay relations are now expressing, the masculinity is now expressing, the race relations that are now expressing. And the same point is sort of drawn by Swa, who speaks about how most white men who identify as gay are masculine, and white same-sex gay masculinity has been drawn and positioned differently from colored and black same-sex masculinity. So it's a shift from history, from structural relations to affecting the current structure that gay masculinity, or MSM, takes. So with that, I'm going to move to the topic of masculinity and look at that in slightly more detail. Masculinities are considered as multiple, competitive, hierarchical, and they always, or they largely work to exclude femininity. And if you use this framework, then in the first instance, it helped to explain some of the violence within and against MSM. And then you look further, within the relationship and in sexual interaction, penetration is also considered to be more symbolic of masculinity than being penetrated. And it may be preferred by older and bisexual men who do not consider themselves to be gay. At another level, MSM identifying as female or as gay, who took on the anal receptive role were found to be significantly and independently associated with experiencing coerced sex. At the same time, MSM who experience intimate partner violence may not see it as such if this contradicts images, dominant images of masculinity. So these are some of the ways that masculinity starts to penetrate MSM practice and relations. Also, regarding the effect on behavior and engagement with health, bisexual men conceal their sexuality when or they are exposed to mental stress and fail to engage with health services as they strive to fit the dominant masculinity profile. And the MSM who experience sexual coercion are driven into sexual risk behavior, including unprotected sex and more sex linked to alcohol and other substance abuse. Now, Vinke and Bolton, almost two decades ago, described what they termed counteractive buffering. And their view was that when men have low social support, this linked to depression in gay people. And then if the same gay person has a high sense of control in themselves, then it translates into, it drives risk-taking. And one instance of that, the way they described was that it leads to intensive sexual contact. So that's what the way these different factors combine. So having high control and not living in a stigmatizing environment leads to depression and then drives you to want to have more intensive sexual control. Now, how do all these notions, what do they mean in the event that one is young and MSM? An important starting point is a study by Knox and colleagues, and their findings resonate with several local South African studies as well as international literature. And they say that young MSM were less likely to be tested than older MSM. Black MSM were less likely to, to be tested than white MSM. Students were less likely than the employed to be tested. And those attracted to both men and women, and those are maybe bisexual, were less likely to be tested. And black men were likely to be younger and student, and those who were HIV positive were likely to be black and self-employed. So younger men who are also receptive and feminine have been found to rely on older men to initiate safety measures. And what then happens is that if you are an older person and you experience problems using condoms due perhaps to erectile dysfunction, this may also motivate one to demand non-use of condoms with the younger partner. Again, gender dynamics will express at that level failure to practice masculinity in a penetrative way, then translates into power dynamics, at that level. And then an interesting notion was mentioned by Reddy and Lowe. They talked about promotion. And this was when young people relished the challenge of getting a new straight man. This man is straight not in necessarily in the sense of their sexual orientation, but because they looked and acted masculine. And they relished to get this kind of man for a sexual partner. And it was called promotion. And such promotion would be done in a rushed manner, with the young men fearing bringing up condom discussions, lest this scared the partner and made them change their mind. Now, as emerged as well in the opening plenary, young people depend a lot on parents and relatives for survival. And just for them to bring up issues of sexuality, let alone indicate that one is non-conforming, can be stressful for them, more so in context of high unemployment, and especially among the young people. This generates a whole set of implications for young MSM. Being rejected by family, their fears of testing, ongoing struggles at the personal level, mental tensions, and potential, therefore, to resort to risk behavior. And it is at this point, I think, that drugs find space in young people's lives. They become viable as an alternative. They become a viable alternative for getting by in an alienating context. Should one become a sex worker, drugs also help to facilitate sex work. At the same time, the ever-lacking danger from sex work and the danger from drug use, from sharing needles when you don't have resources, when you don't have time, resources to buy new needles, that whole scenario of danger creates the need for more intensive drug use, while sidelining any thoughts about engaging with health. These issues came quite strongly in a study that was done by the Medical Research Council, led by Parry and colleagues. In closing, MSM are diverse, and more crucially, they engage in fulfilling relationships. The issues summed here, they work at multiple levels. What you see there is bubbles. They are not meant to be in that neat order, but it's just to indicate some of the issues that impact the risk that young people face. And I think the important thing is that because they are not ordered in this way, it is important to now use them as a starting point to really understand how young people deal with risk in the context of South Africa, and the way these factors interact. And BEIRA has proposed a complex framework for dealing with MSM. And I think it is important to also apply the same context and understand how do different factors affect young people in this complex way. This complex framework is also implicit in the gap analysis that was done by the Desmond Tutu HIV Foundation, and also a policy brief that has been generated by the MSM Global Foundation, and also in PEPFAR's approach to key populations where stress is put on combination interventions. So by looking at these factors, some of them are actually nouns, some verbs. I put them deliberately like that, but to indicate that there are issues that are coming up as we go, and we need to reflect them on them further. So I think we can use frameworks that apply complexity to start ordering them and design studies that focus more closely on young people. There is impetus around work with MSM in South Africa. Various activities are being led by the NGO sector, most of them targeting key populations. It is important to ensure that young MSM are not left behind, and also that rural and non-urban settings are catered for. Efforts to effectively track the epidemic and its determinants in young MSM are needed specifically. And even though some organizations are doing public engagement work, the challenges that are experienced by MSM in general as a population indicate that more work needs to be carried out with greater reach to the public. But there is more need, especially to reach young people in and out of school with information about sexual diversity. The attitudes that we see being expressed by adults are also formed in the formative years. And it's because there is probably something that's lacking in terms of how we socialize and how we include issues of life skills and life orientation at those early ages. And so I think it's important to include issues of sexual diversity at an early stage as well. There's also a need to reach young people using multiple strategies to build on the fast evolving ICT access, but also to be aware of how it can also impact young people in other ways. How would use of ICT expose young people to further risk, for instance? I think those questions need to be answered as we move forward. I think I will stop there for now. Thank you.